Hey guys, Mar here. I'm the guy who edited the video. Just dropping in real quick to throw up a quick disclaimer. We have no idea who recorded this video. It was recorded about a month ago originally, and entirely unscripted. Caleb says that he's pretty sure it was him, so he's getting the credit for it, but we're not 100% sure. And also, obviously, we are going off our own experiences completely in this. We're not a monument of what systems are like, etc., or like the only way to have DID or experience DID. Anyways, with that out of the way, enjoy the video. This doesn't really have a script or anything. I just kind of wanted to ramble. I wanted to talk about like DID in art. I think I'll like come around this topic a lot, but like the way that people will like see people doing like pickaroos or like drawings of their altars and then being like, oh, this means you're faking is so crazy to me, because like imagine going your whole life without ever seeing yourself, like ever. That's like that's an insane concept, I think. If you're given like the ability to like draw out how you perceive yourself to be, why would you not take it? And then like people who like can't draw, there are other options out there for like pickaroos or like doll dress, what am I thinking of? Like doll, like dressing room type applications, you know? Could you imagine like looking in the mirror every single day and not seeing just like yourself? Like at a certain point it sucks, first of all, but like being able to like one, conceptualize what you look like can help immensely with like headspace and stuff, with like visualization, and that helps a lot with communication in of itself. But also like having an identity of your own is also just really important for like a lot of us. I guess it's less so for people in like OSDD 1A systems, because as far as I know, they're more on the like dissociative amnesia side of things. So I guess it like isn't super important for them, but I haven't interacted a lot with that side of the community, which is kind of on me, honestly. I'd love to hear more from them, but I usually hear from OSDD 1B and DID people, because I've heard a handful of things from like OSDD 1A people, but like mostly I think those people go more by like median systems, I think, or like they don't have any sort of identity disturbance at all, which is like completely normal and fine. I guess it wouldn't be as much of an issue for them, but like definitely with people for like OSDD 1B and DID who have like the higher amounts of identity confusion and like the higher amounts of barriers between like the personalities. And I don't really give a shit right now if that's like correct or not, like medically speaking, because like there's this whole thing, it was like, oh, they're not personalities, they're like full people, but like some people do see them as personalities, and I think it's fine to acknowledge that. But like, point is, if you never are able to like conceptualize how you see yourself or like see it in real life, that sucks. Just sucks in general. Like that's just like a horrible thing to have to like go through. And then people will turn around and be like, oh, well, you're faking because you're doing something that's kind of popular in the community, question mark. And it's like, yeah, no shit, it's popular in the community. What else are we supposed to do? It's almost like they don't want us to talk about us having a disorder at all, or just like something that we live with day to day. Because I know some people get like real finicky about like whether the alters themselves are technically disorder, like in of themselves or not. It's like just a different way to kind of live life for some people, which is really cool. And like for the longest time, I didn't believe that my alters were the biggest issue I had with DID, and I still don't. I used to not consider alters like part of like what made DID a disorder at all, but like the longer I've been having a lot more symptoms lately, and I've been like experiencing my DID in new ways recently. So like I think parts of the behavior that some of my alters exhibit are disordered, and I do think that it is causing us to like, it's causing more issues, the longer that it goes on. But I do still hesitate at the idea of calling my alters of them, like, in of themselves a disorder, because that was never really much of my issue. It was always the time loss and the PTSD and the amnesia that was really fucking with me whenever it came to DID. But nowadays, I would definitely consider the identity confusion to be, like, up there on the list of symptoms that I experience that is entirely unpleasant. And it is kind of really frustrating to have to, like, because we split and switch, like, the quote-unquote front group so often, if that makes sense, that, like, there were, like, 5 different people acting as one person at one point, because it was easier to just say that, like, we were just all one person than trying to have to figure out what was who and who was what, etc. And when that finally kind of broke apart is when we started having the most issues, now that I'm thinking about it, really. But my point is, like, a lot of people turn to, like, creative solutions whenever they've experienced trauma, just, like, in general. And, you know, I've seen a lot of people say that, like, in order to have DID, you kind of have to be creative in some capacity, because, like, your brain can't really just, like, pull that shit out of nowhere. It's not just kind of something that happens. It is kind of something that your brain kind of has to, like, workshop, in the case of, like, DID anyways. And it's, like, those, like, that's why a lot of alters fall into, like, stereotypes, I think. It's because of, like, whenever you're younger, you see, like, a lot of, you begin to, like, build onto these stereotypes of, like, the different kinds of people. And, like, whenever I was making characters at that age, let me say, a lot of the characters I made were really, like, one-dimensional. Like, okay, well, here's someone who's super sad, and here's someone who's super bright and happy all the time. And that mentality kind of carried over to my alters from the time. Or maybe it's some sort of, like, vice versa situation, but I've been creating characters basically since I knew that I could create characters. Back whenever I was younger, I was really into warrior cats, and I got really into these warrior cat speed paints. And, like, it suddenly hit me that, like, oh, that's something I can do. Like, I can go and I can draw these characters, and I can make these characters. And then I started making these characters, and I started daydreaming with them, and I definitely developed some sort of, like, maladaptive daydreaming from that I still hold to this day. But, like, a lot of the things that I made those characters go through were me kind of, like, subconsciously working out through some shit. And I think that's true of, like, a lot of people, especially people who are, like, creative and stuff. A lot of the things that I put my characters through at that age was stuff that I would later realize kind of directly paralleled my experiences. I didn't really realize it at the time, but it was definitely, like, something that I had. It was, like, subconscious, but it was definitely me, like, working through some of the things I'd experienced. And, like, especially, like, the more, like, unable to, like, conceptualize things. Like, I gave one of my characters what was basically DID before I ever realized I had DID. Way before I even knew what DID was, honestly. I had these characters who would, like, I think it was, like, if something bad happened to them, then, like, a person called an alter. Believe it or fucking not. I am being so fucking for real. A person called an alter, which I got from the idea of an alter ego. You know, a person called an alter would start popping up in their head and would kind of, like, protect them from the things that they can handle. And I called the, like, original quote-unquote person the counter, because, you know, it's like, here's a counter to the alter. I don't know. But, like, I had the multiple characters who had this, like, alter-counter thing going on, and they would, like, start off really opposed to each other, and, like, I think originally the idea was that, like, they would start off kind of, like, evil and, like, against each other, and then as time went on and they experienced more hardships, they would slowly, like, come together and, like, be friends and, like, start to really, like, care and love for each other like family. Which, looking back, could have meant anything. It could have meant anything, let's be honest with each other. But looking back, that was definitely me, like, subconsciously working out something. I still have those characters to this day, and these days, like, I have kind of revamped them, and they are, like, at least one pair of the characters that I was playing with at the time. They do officially have DID now, which, yay! But, like, I've been kind of, like, projecting all of my experiences through on characters throughout the years. Like, I'm actually going to, like, I'm not even gonna mention the character, but there was a character from a media that I really, really liked, and their experiences were kind of, like, similar to dissociative identity disorder, and I was like, man, that's super awesome. And I, like, really, really loved this character, and I really vibed with them, and I was like, I'm going to make a fic that was like just me writing in Google Docs, where this character has dissociative identity disorder for real. And at the time I felt so fucking guilty. I felt so guilty for writing that fic, because I was like, you know, why do I even care that much? Like, at the time I thought dissociative identity disorder was kind of like a fascinating thing. Like, and I was like, I was always, like, super into, like, mental health stuff, especially whenever I was starting to get really bad, like, depressive episodes. I started trying to kind of make sense of things myself by, like, going in and, like, I started reading about, like, depression and anxiety and, like, OCD, BPD, stuff like that, bipolar disorder, and I started, like, kind of immersing myself in these communities, and my interest in abnormal psychology and mental health is what introduced me to the idea of dissociative identity disorder in the first place, I think. And the concept was, like, fascinating to me. And so, like I said, that character had a lot of parallels with people who had described dissociative identity disorder. So I made a fic that was just for me about that character actually having DID. And I felt really, really guilty about it, because I was like, oh, I'm like romanticizing it. I'm making, like, a big deal out of it. This probably isn't even, like, accurate to what people actually experience. And it was like, it weighed on me for a long time, but it was also extremely comforting in a way, because it was, I couldn't even, like, describe it. It was just something that, like, it was extremely comforting to me. And it took me years after that to figure out why. And it wasn't just like I made an effort to focus on the things about the disorder that weren't as happy and that kind of, like, sucked really, really bad. And, like, I went out of my way to include things like persecutor alters, or, like, identity confusion and blending and co-fronting and, like, amnesia being fucking horrifying, and, like, concepts like dissociative fugue was in there. And it took me I think it was probably 2-3 years for me to realize that after that I had DID. The writing was kind of on the walls for a long time in that regard. But, like, for the longest time, it was something that, like, it was just for me, but it was so, like, I can't even describe it. It was just a weird thing to go through. And, like, even to this day, I still, like, explore things and things that I've gone through art. A couple of years ago, I had a dream about a comic, and the comic was a fascinating, like, concept in of itself. I ended up taking that concept from that dream and kind of, like, pulling it into the real world, and I have plans that one day I want to make, like, a passion project actual comic about it. And one of the characters over time has slowly begun to, like, represent dissociation for me. Like, the main character that I kind of, like, project my feelings of dissociation and identity confusion on is Valentine, and she is one of the, like, main characters that I go to whenever I'm, like, drawing, trying to figure out, like sometimes I'll realize that I'm not feeling well, and I'll start doodling to see if I can start, like, if I can draw the feelings out, since I don't have the words to understand what's happening, if that makes sense. And her experiences with dissociation are extremely not normal. I wouldn't say that she's necessarily coded to have any sort of actual, like, DID or OSD, but I would say that she definitely has, like, identity confusion and, like, a lot of dissociation. And, like, a lot of times whenever, like, I don't know what's going on with myself, I'll start doodling her, and, like, she's kind of become a symbol of, like, my dissociation and identity confusion over time. It's nice to have something that is, like, completely, like, divorced from you, kind of, like, going through the same things that you're going through, because it's easier to make sense of something that is outside of your, like, immediate head, if that makes sense. And, like, I know a lot of, like, people, a lot of, like, creative people in general, usually have, not usually, but, like, a lot of them have some sort of, like, trauma or, like, bad experiences or odd experiences, kind of pushing them along. Like, a lot of people in the furry community, the main, like, reason I've seen for people who are in the furry community, is actually because, like, they don't really identify with being human because they feel so outcasted. And, like, obviously, people in the DID community, like, a lot of them have gone through some pretty serious repetitive trauma. So it's more likely than not that, like, they're also creative people. And of course there are people who aren't creative who have gone through that, and there are people who are very creative who haven't gone through it. And I don't want it to get, like, mixed up, like, oh, you have to be this in order to be this. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just kind of rambling. I've seen a lot of, like, animators come out as, like, plural or having DID, and, like, I've always seen people being like, oh, you only started doing this after DID became popular. That's like, no, not really. It's like, people, you can't really be open about anything you're going through without people being like, oh, well, you're faking. I've mostly experienced this with DID. I've, like, vaguely seen some people with autism experience it, but, like, the most amount of, like, fake claiming I've ever seen has been with DID, like, hands down. It's just weird. I wanted to get my thoughts out. I think about this stuff a lot, but I don't really have a lot of time or energy these days to, like, put together super thought out videos on them. And I noticed that, like, a lot of my more well-performing videos were educational videos, and I never really wanted that for my channel. I always wanted to be more, like, down to earth, I guess. Look, a million other people have done, like, terminology videos and explained what DID is. You don't need me for that. Like, if I'm alienating a part of my viewership, I'm sorry, but I just want to talk about my experiences, and I want other people who experience similar things to feel kind of, like, welcome as well. That's all I've ever wanted. It's been crazy lately. It's been pretty hard, but I've been thinking a lot about, like, metaphors and, like, art in particular in relation to DID recently, so I just wanted to get my thoughts out somewhere. If you like some of this, like, more rambly content, I didn't have a script for any of this. I just kind of started talking, and I don't know if I explained any of my actual thoughts super well, but if you guys liked it, let me know, and I can definitely see myself making more content like this. I'm not gonna promise anything because I've been dealing with a lot recently, but maybe someday, whenever the water kind of settles, I can get back to making videos and stuff. And I have been pretty, like, semi-active on my Tumblr account. It's currently under Stardust Aberration. I'll put it in the description below if you guys are interested in that, and I'll see you guys at some point. Maybe, maybe not. Bye.